So to the first of our sessions this morning. I'm delighted to say we're joined for the first of what we call our CEO Chair conversations by Martin Urnekian, who's Chief Executive of Corporación América Airports and Chair of ACI World, the body which of course represents the world's airports. Martin's company, as many of you will know, currently operates 52 airports in Argentina, Brazil, Peru, Uruguay, Ecuador, Armenia, and Italy. And Martin is also chairman of Aeropuertos Argentina 2000 and a member of the board of each of the airport operating companies controlled by the group. So Martin, you're very welcome to join us today. If you can just turn on your screen once more.
Hello there, Martin.
You. So just by way of a note to viewers before we begin, you can join the conversation too by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So if you have a question or a comment for any of our speakers, including Martin today, we'll aim to get to those a little bit later. Martin, we wanted to start today by really assessing what the situation is across your own company's network of airports in terms of traffic and business. So if you can maybe paint us briefly that picture and we'll move on from there.
Great. Well, not so great. Everybody in the industry, I think, it's very much hit and affected by the pandemic. And our areas of operation in Corporación América Airports are mostly based in South America, but we're also in Europe and the CIS. So we've had mixed results during the last year. We started with quite impressive lockdowns, mostly in South America. But in the end, what we've seen, it's a long process that has had its up and downs since March last year. We had some total lockdowns that were eased and then put back in force again. So as probably happened in all the regions, what we have is it's a very steep decline in passengers everywhere, with mixed results whenever the restrictions are eased a little bit by countries. So instead of going into specific numbers for each region or each country, which in the end are around, let's say, 70% down year on year, if you take 2020 versus 2019, and that trend continues into 2021. What I would say is that there were two factors since the pandemic started. One was the fear that was probably the main driver at the beginning of the pandemic. Everybody was afraid of this, and everybody stopped traveling because they were afraid of this. Then the pandemic evolved, and we all started talking about this new normality. So we do not have now in the population that this huge fear of moving around, of traveling, because everybody has come to terms with what's going on, I think. So in the beginning, the driver that most affected the drop was probably fear. And on top of that, you had the restrictions. Now, fear is still there, but it has turned into something different, something that most people consider manageable. And what's driving the passengers down now, it's mostly restrictions. Restrictions sometimes based on hard data, but many times based on measures that are taken to give the populations a certainty that things are, that the governments are doing something for them. But the effect that this has on an industry that is so important for the world GDP, we're talking about 10% of the world GDP here, it's so profound that organizations like ours, like ASUTIL, IAA, DFS, ACI, where we work, IATA, you name it, I think we also have to come to terms with the fact that this is here to stay and there is a new normality, and start taking the steps towards systems that can withstand time and ensure governments and people's safety by using technology to be able to restart travel. Because it is clear we started 2020 and everybody was talking about a peak and then a decline, and then the new normality would come within 2020, and that never happened. We are already well within 2021, and this is clear a new normality. So even where restrictions are not there, like the U.S., and where travel is picking up thanks to the vaccinations campaign, um, we still have numbers that are close to 50% down. So if we are going to move ahead, we have to take the restrictions of the rest of the world out as well.
Yeah. And I suppose just to put in context, I mean, we maybe talk a little bit about the new normality, because I'd like to get your view of what you see that looking like in the future. But just before that, what's your hope, I suppose, and perhaps reasoned expectation and best estimate about how that recovery will take shape through 2021 and beyond? A little bit like looking into a crystal ball at this stage, but what do you think recovery will look like to you in the shorter, medium, and even longer term?
So very difficult to say again. If I take what the common knowledge was in the beginning of 2020 when this began, it has nothing to do with what actually happened and what we're going through now. So I wouldn't dare to make strong predictions on what will happen. We all have our hopes way up on the effectiveness of the vaccination campaigns and the fact that through 2021 the world will get vaccinated, and that will allow governments to lift restrictions, and through that we're going to see a recovery. There is one thing that everybody talks about, and there is little data about, but that there are a few surveys made which indicate that people have been so afraid. Their lives have changed so much in such a short period of time that although there are many factors that are probably here to stay that will let's say decrease or disencourage people to travel, there are other factors that will supposedly make people travel more once restrictions are lifted. No, there is a lot of people really hoping and with a big eager to be able to travel the world and move around again. So I think we are into uncharted territory here. I think
Yeah.
we are all working with information we have and trying to move into the future and putting a lot of hopes into the vaccines, which I think it's the right path, and that probably in an asymmetric way it will restart the world, like we are seeing in the US, for example, where the vaccination campaigns are going really fast, and that is allowing them to lift the restrictions, and people are getting confidence to start traveling again. So most probably we will see that happening in the rest of the world through 2021. Even places where today they have very low access to vaccines, it will probably, all the numbers that I've seen show that by the end of 2021, the vaccine availability will be widespread, and that most countries will be able to move ahead with their vaccination campaigns, and that would definitely start this recovery by sometime in 2021, and again in different regions at different times during the year. But if I could put something into the minds of the people that lead the industry, is that we hope that this is the right path. But since we are in uncharted territory, we should think of a plan B. And the plan B is to talk to governments and work our way industry together to adapt to a new normality. Even if we have the case of the president of Argentina today. 2 days ago, he tested positive of COVID, and he took the vaccine in December, I think. So this shows that vaccines are very effective. He probably would have been really bad if he didn't get the vaccine, but we should work towards implementing technology that allows restart no matter what. That will be my main concern as of today.
Yeah, I suppose, and that's much talked about at the moment, is this coordinated approach by governments and international authorities to allow the return and safe return of travel from the consumer side. Clearly, that safety and health of travel situation is going to be top of mind, but the coordination, or perhaps lack of it, is perhaps one of the big issues out there. Do you think that, speaking, I suppose, with the ACI hat on, that the voice of airports overall and aviation generally has been heard loud enough through this crisis in much of the world, and including your own?
So I think the voice has been raised. I don't know if it's been heard enough, because if you take the measures that governments take, they do not seem to really take the available resources to make travel safe and really embrace them and put them as a system coordinated, because international travel is probably one of the most standardized and well coordinated industries in the world, where airlines talk to each other, reservation systems, immigration systems. It's a lot of work and a lot of systems that talk to each other. So making changes in this kind of system is really hard. That's why our industry is one that probably it's a little bit behind compared to the retail industry and other industries into going fully online, because of that much work and the fact that there are so many sovereign governments having an opinion on how to do these integrations. And I think that's why today we find it so hard to have common measures and common recommendations. You have countries that force 14 days quarantine to travelers into hotels, which makes it, if that is in place, you will only travel, it's fully mandatory. No one wants to stay in a hotel locked up for 14 days just because they travel. And with widespread availability of testing, it doesn't make that much sense to really do that. When you can test someone before they leave, once they arrive, and then a few days afterwards, and really be sure that that the state of health of that people, compared to the rest of the population that is going around cities and going along with their lives without getting tested every 7 days or so. So I think that is the required next step for the industry, because again, we've all went into the online world, we've all embraced the virtual world. We have this conference, which is really nice, but I hope that no one here really believes that this is the way of the future and that we will not see face to face anymore. I hope this is not the new normality, because I wouldn't like it.
It's going to be part of the future, I think, Martin. If not the whole future, it's going to be part of it, I think. Yeah, for sure. And then just to finally on that point, it really is a challenge from this point where we see IATA travel pass or whatever other mechanisms are out there to be rolled out at a global level and agreed upon by governments. You could suspect it might be a years-long effort to get that done on a coordinated basis, and yet speed is going to be of the essence to make that happen this year. And I guess from ACI, the ACI point of view and your own company point of view, that's something that can't happen soon enough.
Yes, and that is where the effort should be, at least in my view. I think companies and organizations should work together to implement these solutions as fast as possible, to give confidence to the governments that the testing versus quarantine makes sense. and now it's testing, vaccination, or quarantine,
Yeah.
because then you will have hopefully you will have these digital vaccination certificates that will allow you to move somehow freely around the world. So um, that I think is the new normality, and that will probably stay for 2, 3, 4 more years or so. The experts say totally different things if you talk to different ones. So um, we should be, I think, we should go into the safe side as an industry and really promote this and invest into this,
Yeah.
because and convince governments that this is the way.
Yeah. Just taking a step back to your reaction and your to crisis last year, just over a year ago, and your priorities at the time, and how they've shifted to what they are today. How have you moved on as an organization, and what are those big strategic priorities right now for you? Is it simply about protecting cash and making sure you still have a business when it comes back?
Well, that was definitely at the beginning. The beginning, it was safety of employees, passengers, and the community, taking all the required measures. That was one key priority. Of course, then uh, 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 safeguarding cash, because when you have such an abrupt uh, shutdown of the industry, that is totally key, and that's what most companies, our company, that's what it's been doing for the last year or so. But yes, today they shifted into working towards reopening, and it's been proven really hard. Governments are really afraid of uh, um, the situation where hospitals are overwhelmed and they cannot take care of the population, and travel um, has been pointed out as the reason for this, and so many measures are put into the travel industry that are disproportionate to the real risk today. You know? The virus is all over the world already inside countries. So uh, travel has been probably the way for the virus to move around the world. But now that we know how it behaves, now that we know how to test it, we should put strong systems in place to trust in that, and allow the industry to restart. I think that would be our priority today, to talk to governments and to convince everybody that there is a way to restart. And probably not be as massive as it was in the beginning. It takes some time, but if we do not start, we will never get there.
Yeah, yeah. Can I touch briefly on the partnerships that you have at your airports, particularly commercial and concession partners? Duty free, of course, a business you know very well. What broadly has been the impact? I guess it mirrors the impact on your overall business, but also perhaps beyond that, how have you tried to work together with those partners, and what does that effort look like, sustaining that effort look like in the future, given that a lot of those partners will probably need support for some time to come?
So I think we are all in the same boat, and we're suffering from exactly the same thing. So I think the most important thing about this is that it made us start thinking on these kind of solutions. So how do you keep the Summit of the Americas working even if people cannot meet face to face, and you design a solution? So I think the travel retail industry and the travel industry itself have uh, have long had ideas on what is the next step for the industry. How do we engage with the consumer using the tools that are available through technology? And I think as an industry, because we didn't really need it, we lagged a little bit behind the rest of the world, let's say the outside world. And I think that one of the interesting things of what's going on is that it's allowing us to stop and think on how do we want to shape the future from now on. And it's allowing us to have conversations with our suppliers to create new solutions, new systems, and new ways to engage with the consumers that will probably allow us to be far more efficient in the future. Maybe it's not tomorrow, but at least we will have a roadmap on where we want to go. At least that's what we think in our companies. No, we've been taking this time and taking all these people that had a day-to-day business that was really exciting and busy, and stop to think on, now that we have a lot of time in our hands, on what do we want, how we want to engage, and how can we engage more efficiently with our consumer. And that is the data recollection, the data sharing, and the integration between duty free, different tenants at the airport itself, and hopefully airlines and the whole community can create products that we have not even thought so far, and that can make the life of the consumer far better, and it can make us far more efficient in terms of getting more revenue per passenger in the future. So I think that is one priority that has probably shifted, and that has, and one thing that would be a consequence of this pandemic to our industry.
And just to push you a little bit more on that, I mean, is that along? Are you taking or investing in e-commerce in a big way? Is that one of the solutions here? Is it, around new ways of engaging in terms, pre-order or whatever other digital tools that might be at your disposal that connects the ecosystem at your airports in a better way? What practical steps might we see or are taking shape?
So we are investing. Pre-order and so on are probably the low-hanging fruits. But what we are trying to create, it's a roadmap on integration and on data sharing and on data collection that would be most probably the raw material that the whole industry will use once we create it, to propose new solutions, to propose new products, new services. And there is no way to do that if all the actors, all the stakeholders in the industry are totally separated with systems that do not talk to each other. And the airlines, within each other, they are very much used to talking to each other in terms of systems. But duty free has always been an island. The rest of the tenants at the airports have all had their data and have not connected to a common system and share data and allow the passenger to have a common experience. And although it's probably less practical than implementing, let's say, things like what we are also doing, that which is, for example, gate delivery. So if you want food, if you want duty free or anything at the airport, there is a portal that you can go into, interact with the tenants, and get delivery to wherever you are at the gate within the airport. So those are the first steps, I think. But once we start having the exercise of integrating each other, then I think completely new products can arise, and we can transform the experience of the consumer and the passenger at the airports, which will probably lead to far more efficiency in terms of revenues and on satisfaction of the passengers.
Yeah, we talk a lot, I suppose, about where the airline sits alongside the industry trinity of airport retailer and brand owner, and the airline is how do you make that trinity a quaternity? I think has been a long running question, and in terms of them, the airlines being open about the data that they have, because clearly they have very rich data on the consumer has always been the big question. But you think there's a way that that can happen, and that they can be encouraged and incentivized to share and work as a true ecosystem?
I think so. I think, and again, realities are very different. No? You have airports that are dominated by airlines, where investment makes the most sense in that integration, because these are again expensive things. But I think as we move towards an even more digital world, these things that in the past were really huge and complicated and expensive projects will become far less expensive and far more doable in terms of time, and it will allow the integration to be faster and obvious in the end, because now uh, most there are a lot of stakeholders in the industry that do not think that the integration makes sense or that it's obvious. Even duty-free retailers are somewhat, um, um, I would say, jealous. I don't know how to say it, about their data. Um, but if we share it intelligently with the rest of the community, the benefit that we can have by sending information and receiving it, I think it can be transformational for our industry. That will definitely be hit by this pandemic in the long term. No? There are a lot of meetings. I hope these summits are not here to stay in the virtual form, but definitely are a lot of one-to-one meetings that are not going to take place face-to-face anymore. They are going to switch to these platforms, and those are passengers that we are going to lose uh, for the long term. So we need to come up with ideas and solutions that make the experience better and thus create more efficiency and revenue.
Yeah. Just on a broader question about the future, you spoke about transforming the industry overall. Do you think the airports industry in itself is going to be transformed through this? You know, might the crisis have impacts on the structure of the airports business in the Americas and beyond? Might we see more consolidation through the industry? Well, what's the view at this still relatively early stage about what the future is going to hold?
Yeah, I think it's in the early stage. Depends a lot on how things are going to shape up, and the responses of governments as well. We will have a lot to do on how the industry rearranges itself. No, the U.S. has issued huge stimulus packages that have affected positively airports and airlines. In Europe, there have been measures that have supported in different countries the industry, and elsewhere in different forms and shapes there have been measures. So all of these were taken as emergency situations. If this takes a longer term and these emergency situations are not there anymore and this becomes a new normality, then we will have to see how the industry behaves and who can withstand and be more um, resilient to everything that's going on.
Yeah. And what about your own ability to invest? I mean, what impact has there been on your projects across the network? Are there some that you're prioritizing? Because clearly, once the return happens, you want to be in a position where you can build back quickly along with the partners that you have at the airports.
Yeah, but if you think most of the investment done by airports, it's to increase capacity. And everybody has overcapacity now. And nobody can tell what kind of capacity requirements we will have in the next few years. So most people, including ourselves, and have stopped all capacity increases because we do not know, because we're preserving cash and we do not know what the future ahead looks like. But whatever it was possible, what we've been doing is doing the works that if we have an industry that is working, would have a lot of impact into the passenger and revenues, like building runways that where you need to shut down an airport and things like that. This stop allows us to do it without huge disruption and leaves us prepared to growth once we start without this disruption in a moment that the industry is really moving. So we've taken those opportunities wherever possible, but the rest in terms of increasing capacity, it's totally stopped.
Yeah,
And the
I guess.
investments that we are talking about in terms of retail and integration compared to capacity increases are very small. So those things we really can do. It's more a matter of putting minds to work than really investing a lot in capital expenditures.
Yes, and I suppose we're also looking at this question marks about what type of retail F&B other services will be required. Are we looking at a whole new set of consumer dynamics? Because clearly at the moment the reaction has been certainly to make everything much more touchless, much more digital, and that's something that you're already clearly adapting and reacting to, and you must spend a lot of time thinking about where the consumer of the future is going to be in 2, 3, 5 years time.
Definitely, definitely. We have an advantage by being at the airport and the dwell time, and that is, I think, will always be there. But more and more, as generations that were native digitally start traveling and going into the airports, if we do not offer a sizable experience compared to what they are used to in their everyday lives with their smartphones and their apps, we will lose that consumer, I think, if we are not up to that challenge. And that challenges us in all aspects. It's not only in the experience side, which is definitely a component, but in terms of competition, no? Because if a consumer is at the store looking at the product and checking, comparing the price with the rest of the world at the time that they are buying, impulse still a big push. I think it will always be, but competition is going to be far tougher.
Yeah, so that's a constant conversation, is what the role of price will be in retail in particular. F&B is a little bit different in terms of the drivers behind it, but that's something that for sure. So really, in some ways, you need to probably rethink, in some ways, the commercial offer overall in terms of what will appeal to people and why it will appeal to them.
And more than ever, the experience of the personalized experience, it's ever more important, and we'll keep on growing that trend. No, the Amazons of our life learn from every click, every tap we make, and learn about us and give us a constantly more personalized experience. And if we're not up to that in our industry, I think we will be a little bit left out. So it's a huge challenge for us. I think we have a great advantage, but we have to make use of it.
Yeah. I suppose just coming to a conclusion slowly, do you have a message to the wider industry about the future, including to retailers and brands that invest at your airports out there, but are perhaps uncertain about what the future might hold?
I think that I'm still very optimistic about travel. Read surveys, talk to people. Everybody is crazy about being able to move and to travel again into the world. So I think our industry will keep being very, very relevant, and will still be an amazing place to showcase brands and to engage consumers, because it's a situation like no other when you're traveling and when you are going through an airport. But I think that now it's the time to unite behind a way and a standardized way to reopen the industry. And I don't think we have to lose sight of these challenges that we will have in the future. That are definitely going to be accelerated by all these digital steep curve that we all went through during the pandemic. So I think now it's a standardized system to reopen, and into the future, thinking how we compete with the virtual world with the advantage that we have, because we do have. I'm very certain that we have a great industry and a great place and a great way to engage with consumers. We just have to take it to the next level.
Very good. Well, some important messages to leave us with there. We'll wrap it up there. But before we do, I do want to thank Martin. Thank you, Martin, for taking the time to join us today from Uruguay and for offering us a terrific overview of where the industry stands at this point in its recovery. We look forward, everyone, to greeting you back here at 10:30 Eastern Time for what promises to be another really engaging session, this time where we get the views of three leading travel retailers about the health of the market and how they see the rebuilding phase again. Many thanks again, Martin, and we'll see everyone else shortly. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.